Today, we're going to be talking about what to know about the dream pursuit of homeownership. Let's get into it. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us yet again. And Jill Paddock is here, of course, the phenomenal buyer's agent on the team.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So we found out some really interesting statistics here, where mainly young people, millennials, potentially older Gen Zs, and even the older, more your generation, which is
what is it, Zennials?
No, you're Generation X, aren't you?
Oh yeah,
You're Gen
am
X?
I'm kind of Gen X, kind of millennial.
I know, I'm in the
I think
in
I'm
between.
a geriatric millennial. Is what I am.
Yeah,
That's what it's called.
Didn't you love that term when it first came out?
I know, I feel really old.
I'll take my hover round out of here, I guess.
There you go.
When the podcast's over. Well, anyway, we came across this stat that says 95% of renters believe their rent is too high. That's no big sort of revelation there, right?
Yeah, no shock there. Rents have just been going up and up and up and up. So there's completely understanding that they're frustrated with it.
Yeah. Are you seeing buyers basically like, I can't afford where rents are headed, and they're projected to be like above 10, 15% year over year, just keep on growing, which
yeah, and they're starting
really
to
tough.
realize like, well, if I, a little bit of digging online, they realize that they can get a mortgage payment for about the same thing. Yeah. And so that's when like the curiosity starts, and then it's kind of the questions of, well, how does this really work? And, the whole snowball of everything we're about to talk about.
Right. Yeah. And the thing about when you're paying rent to your landlord is it's paying down their equity, basically, or they're gaining equity for you paying their mortgage.
Absolutely.
And you're not really gaining anything. You're kind of throwing it into a pit. Now, given you don't have as many things to fix that might go wrong. However, if it's not a great landlord, they're not going to, they may not fix things anyway.
There's a whole lot that plays into that. And actually, I think you and I are going to be talking about one of these situations a little bit later, as far as, how these landlords, it is a great investment for them, but unfortunately, these renters are paying their mortgage for them.
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely. It kind of makes sense if you're looking for financial security in the future to look to purchasing rather than renting, right?
Absolutely.
And that's why 35% think that homeownership is an important wealth building tool. Now, I did want to mention that this report was a 2022 Millennial and Gen Z borrower sentiment report, is what this is based around. So what these numbers are based around. And they basically do see, even though especially millennials lived through the 2008 crash, which jaded a lot of us from buying a home. Less so the Gen Zs, they didn't really live through it. So
yeah, they just kind of heard about it, glimmers here and there.
Yeah.
But no, I've actually got a client of mine who is realizing how much opportunity she missed by not exploring, truly like what finance means, what wealth building means, and not purchasing earlier. So great news for this group, though. It's not too late to fix that. You're still at a great point to start. Lots of good reasons to buy. Yeah,
especially millennials. They tend to buy at age 32 on average. And we're finding much younger with Gen Z. They tend to be in like early 20s.
I was just going to say,
later 20s.
I've kind of had an onslaught of buyers that are in their early 20s that have started kind of listening to Financial Insight, taking a few classes. And I would say in the past 6 months, I've helped 3 people that are anywhere between 22 and 25 buy houses with the intention of using it as a wealth building tool and renting it later.
There you go. And part of this study also says 16% seek the sense of security owning a home. So that means the foreclosure process is a little more complicated than the eviction process.
Right.
So I would venture that most people would see, like, not necessarily that you would get to the foreclosure process. However, if you missed a payment, there is a pretty large grace window for you to make that up. And you can always talk to the lender too, or the loan servicer who's carrying your loan, to be like, hey, are there programs to help me? And there are.
There are.
Yeah.
I was going to say that's one potentially good thing that came out of COVID is there were all sorts of programs created with the mortgage servicers, realizing that it's to the benefit of everybody if they can work out some terms to keep the person in the house. Not a huge financial impact on them, like doesn't affect them the way a foreclosure or a short sale would. So those kinds of programs came out of COVID. Now, granted, hopefully we are seeing them used less frequently, but for those people who do have some issues, occasionally somebody's going to lose a job. You don't want to lose your house. There are ways around it. Yeah.
Forbearance was, I think, probably the biggest one during COVID that potentially helped a much bigger thing that could have happened. We could have snowballed into a lot of short sales and a lot.
Been terrible.
Yeah. So I'm glad that the government sort of was able to provide that program. And people who were in, the percentage was actually really high for people who got out of forbearance. They were able to work something out with the lender, and that forbearance program basically helped them keep their home. So that was really great to see happen. And now we have 37% plan to use it as an investment property.
Right.
That's similar to what kind of we're doing in our game plan is in our own lives.
Yeah, you and I both personally have that game plan. And then, like I said, we're seeing a lot of people in their early 20s. And I will kind of say, like you said, they didn't really live through 2008, so they're not quite as jaded. So they have the ability to kind of think a little more open-mindedly. It's a little less frightening to them. And they are looking towards the future. How this is going to be my house now. What can I do with it later? What are my options going to be, and things like that.
Yeah. And like we talk about growing generational wealth a lot on this program, and that is part of that, right? And once you buy for the first time and make the next step to move up, it's a little bit easier. It's actually a lot easier because you have an asset behind you and a proven track record that you've been paying this mortgage off for this long.
Absolutely.
At X amount. So, and then when you leave that behind to rent it out, you can use the rental income asset to put towards the next move up home that you're moving into. So that's a really handy thing, I think that.
Right. And you also potentially you will have then equity in the home that you were using as your primary residence. You can use that as an asset. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do. It really opens up a whole new set of doors for you once you make that first leap.
That's why it's a great idea to game plan this with a professional like Jill, who can give you all the tips and the key sort of strategies to plan it long term, and not just like the home right now that I'm buying.
Exactly.
It's, let's look at this in the future, because the first home you buy, it's okay to buy a starter home. It's just fine to do that. Don't be stigmatized by that.
Those starter homes make great rental homes later on.
That is so true. And then it becomes like, it's okay if it gets a little messed up from renters and things, right? Because it's not your move up home or where you're going to end up.
It's not your dream home. It's your starter home. It's your starter home, the first place. You can do some things to it and learn a little bit about home ownership without, taking on something that's completely intimidating.
Yeah.
And then again, feel more prepared for when you are ready to move up.
Yeah. So what do you see with mortgages coming out? Do you see people getting confused or anything with this process? Or
I see lots of people being confused. The first-time buyers, of course, are confused because they've never done it before. Yeah. But even people who have get a little kind of stumbling along the way.
Sure.
They're not quite sure, or they've forgotten things. But there are so many moving parts. And I think what I see, unfortunately, too often is people think, oh, I'm not going to talk to an agent. I'm not going to talk to anybody until I'm ready to buy. Well, that's fine. But then it feels like you're drinking out of a fire hose, because it's like, well, now we have to do this. Now we got to do that. Then this comes next. Because the process does move quickly.
Right.
So if I were to have my ideal situation with the buyer, 3 to 6 months before you're considering buying. I mean, longer if you really want to interview some different people.
Yeah.
Sit down with somebody. How does it work? I have one client I've sat down with, 2 times plus a good long phone call.
Yeah.
Because she wants to understand the process. It was
that's a change. That's good.
Yeah, it's great.
It's good.
And I'm happy to answer any question. I want them to feel like they know what's going on. I don't want them to feel lost.
Right. And I think that's easy for us on our end to take for granted because of how much we are in it every day. We know what happens and knows what comes next, and we use lingo and things, and we tend to forget sometimes. So that's why we have now standardized procedures that sort of help us and help our clients along the way to make sure that they understand what's happening.
Hey everyone, we want to interrupt this episode to let you know that we are a Keller Williams Southern Arizona franchise.
We are also realtors practicing equal housing. Now let's get you back to the podcast.
Absolutely. The worst thing I think to feel is you're making the biggest, purchase of your life, really, and feeling lost and confused and things like that. That's not a good feeling for you to be in. That's not where we want you to start off.
Yeah.
So, anything that we can do to help you start the process, understand the process, so happy to do that.
Yeah. And plus the mortgage process, that's probably the most regulated process of the entire thing. So there's lots of stuff you need to sign and go over, lots of legalese that you have to read through and understand. And that's what the lender that you choose and your real estate agent will sort of help you navigate that more and more. And let's be honest, it's never easy to have someone be like, here's my finances, person I don't know. Look at all of these things.
Yeah, I would even feel a little bit, I've applied for mortgages. I've had people, but if, next time every time it's like, all right, here you go.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So everybody feels a little weird, but it's fine. They've seen a lot.
Yes.
Not a big deal.
Yeah. And out of this study too, almost half, 45.75% feel they don't have enough of savings to make the down payment. Now, there are different programs out there that can help you a lot with that. Can you explain maybe what some of those are?
Yeah. So, if you qualify for a VA loan, that's great. 0 down.
Yep.
Then you only have closing costs. But, a lot of people don't. Most people, I would say, don't.
Yeah. And that's Veterans Affairs.
Correct. Veterans Affairs, I should
Talk
say.
about the word soup that we normally go over.
Perfect example right there.
Yeah.
But for a first-time home buyer, there is, I'll use some more things, conventional loans. There's FHA loans. They have various amounts that are required.
Federal Housing Association.
There you go. They do have, you don't have to have the 20% down.
Yeah.
You can get down payment assistance,
Yep.
which are, again, depending on the program, they're funds that are a lot of times forgiven once you've lived in the home for 3 years, 5 years, whatever the terms of it might be.
Right.
But you don't got to pay it back. It's just money for you to buy your first home.
Yeah. They're either grants or second forgivable loans tend to how they are structured.
Yep.
And those tend to also be local. So there aren't too many national down payment assistance programs. And so that's why it's also good to get with your local real estate professional. And then that way they could sort of help you understand that.
Local real estate professional can definitely point you in the direction of a local lender who knows about all of these, can help you figure out which is the best one for you. All that being said, I don't want people to walk away thinking that you can walk into a house with no money out of pocket, because that's not true. There are some things like inspection fees and closing and certain closing costs that you are going to have some money.
Sure.
But you don't have to have that 20% that everybody thinks you have to have.
Yeah.
It's a lot more reasonable and a lot more realistic. And the other thing is, a lot of these millennials especially do have some sort of retirement 401ks or things like that.
Yep.
Where you can take money out without being taxed on it in order to help pay for some of these fees.
Absolutely.
So some of you out there probably have assets that you haven't even considered tapping into to get you into that home and to start building that wealth. Yeah,
that's so true. And same with even like gift letters from your parents or a relative who's willing to sort of front a little bit of money. And in that instance, make sure it is a gift and not a loan, because that could offset your debt to income ratio and have you not qualify to buy a house. So, but there are ways, and if you do that, consult a tax professional too to make sure you're not getting taxed on that. We are licensed realtors, not licensed tax professionals.
Correct.
So
we can point you in the direction of a solid tax professional to help you out.
Exactly right. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jill, for sort of making these things a little less complicated. It is not as complicated as you might think it would be, especially if you have a licensed professional on your side who has gone through this stuff, not only on their own, but with hundreds of other clients as well.
Multitudes of clients in all sorts of situations.
Yeah.
There is always a solution that we can help you find.
Right.
You just have to ask us to help you.
And we do have a great network of real estate agents around the country too. So depending on where you are at, we can always get you connected with them, and they can help you basically navigate this whole sort of complicated system. And that's what we're here for. That's how we make a living, right?
Absolutely. Helping people get into their first home.
All right. Well, thank you, Jill, and we will see you guys on the next podcast. Thank you for listening and watching the Nitty Gritty of Real Estate podcast here with the Tom J. Krieger team of Keller Williams, Southern Arizona. If you are interested in buying a home, selling a home, or even investing in real estate, we have 5,000 agents across the country that we can connect you to. If you need any free resources, feel free to check out our website at www.thetjkteam.com. We hope you have a great day.